High on a lonely ridge in West Virginia, where the fog curls like silent fingers through the trees, stands the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. Its towering stone walls, weathered and cracked, hide decades of screams and sorrow. Built in 1864, it was meant to be a place of care, but instead became a chamber of human suffering. Here, minds already fragile were subjected to treatments we can barely imagine today: cold baths, isolation, and devices meant to tame the mind, each leaving invisible scars deeper than any wound. As you walk through its long, dim hallways, the air feels heavier, as if each brick remembers the agony of those who walked these corridors. They say the walls themselves whisper at night, carrying the echoes of voices that never found peace. Some visitors claim to see shadow figures darting through the corners of their vision, only to vanish when looked at directly. Others speak of sudden, icy chills, the unmistakable touch of something unseen brushing past. There are stories of spirits who linger not because they wish to harm, but because they cannot leave the torment behind. Some are angry, thrashing against invisible chains of memory and sorrow, while others appear almost childlike, wandering aimlessly, caught between worlds. And then there are the Jinn, ethereal beings, neither fully human nor fully spirit, whose presence, some say, is felt in the flicker of lights, or the low hum that runs through the halls at midnight. Night tours are offered to the brave, but few leave unchanged. The more you explore, the more the asylum seems alive, as if it watches, waiting for you to notice the subtle movements in the darkness. The continuity of suffering seems endless here. The past does not stay buried. The groans, the whispers, the fleeting shadows, they stitch a story of lives interrupted, of minds tormented, and of restless spirits who refuse to vanish quietly into history. Walking the halls at night, you begin to understand why this place draws so many. It is not just fear that pulls you in, it is curiosity, a deep need to feel what once was. And in the silence, if you listen carefully, the asylum speaks to you, through the flicker of a candle, the scrape of unseen footsteps, or a whisper that chills your very soul. You feel the continuity of time blur, past and present collide. And for a moment, you are not just an observer, but part of the story, caught between the living and those who never truly left. When the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum first opened its massive, stone doors in 1864, it was heralded as a beacon of hope for the mentally ill, a sanctuary where troubled minds might find relief. But the reality inside those walls was far darker, far more twisted than anyone outside could imagine. The asylum, with its endless corridors and looming towers, soon became a theater of suffering. A place where hope was a fragile visitor, and pain held dominion. Patients were admitted with the promise of care. Yet many found themselves subjected to treatments designed not to heal, but to control, punish, or break the mind entirely. Cold baths, sometimes lasting hours, left bodies shivering and teeth chattering, while isolation cells swallowed the screams of those trapped within. The very air inside seemed thick with despair, carrying whispers of torment that had been repeated for decades. Suspense clung to every corner. It was said that certain wards held the echoes of patients long gone, their voices intermingling with the groans of the living. Some claimed that if you listened carefully, the faint dragging of chains could be heard at midnight, a reminder that cruelty leaves an imprint beyond flesh and bone. Electric shocks, once considered a form of treatment, made flesh scream and minds reel, while straitjackets held people so tightly that their very bones seemed to protest. One could not walk these halls without feeling an almost tangible continuity of anguish, as if every suffering soul who had ever been confined here had left a trace that the next visitor could feel. It is in these moments of terror that the presence of spirits, and perhaps Jinn, becomes undeniable. The asylum's history of pain seems to have drawn them in, feeding on sorrow and fear. Witnesses have reported shadows moving across the walls where no living person stands, figures appearing at the end of long corridors, then vanishing the instant they are noticed. Some patients, long dead, are said to walk these halls still, restless and unable to leave, their whispers echoing stories of treatments that were both cruel and inescapable. And the Jinn, those ethereal beings that exist between the worlds of spirit and flesh, are believed to dwell in the most tortured corners. Drawn by the energy of suffering, their presence felt in sudden chills, flickering lights, or the inexplicable feeling of being watched. Yet, amidst this horror, there is a strange kind of continuity. Every stone, every creaking floorboard, every shadowed archway holds the memory of what occurred here. The asylum does not simply exist as a building, it is a living monument to human anguish. The walls remember the screams, the footsteps, the moments when reality itself seemed to bend under the weight of fear. And in that memory, the stories of cruelty are retold, over and over, through the whispers of the spirits, and the flickering of lights that respond to no one. One can sense it, the persistence of the past in the present, a haunting continuity where time is fluid, where the screams of the past mingle seamlessly with the footsteps of the living. Walking through these corridors, one cannot help but feel the spell the asylum casts. It is not merely fear that seizes the visitor. It is an overwhelming sense of history pressing down, of lives lived in torment, and of spirits, both human and supernatural, refusing to let their stories fade. The treatments that once wrought cruelty are no longer visible in flesh, but their echoes remain, suspended in the cold air, stitched into the very architecture. And if you pause in the right place, at the right time, you may hear it. The soft, sorrowful whisper of a patient from a century ago, calling out from the shadowy corners, a ghostly reminder of the asylum's dark legacy. The Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum is not just a relic of human cruelty. It is a magnet for the unexplained, a place where the veil between the living and the spirit world seems thin, almost transparent. Step into its long, echoing halls at night, and the air changes. It becomes heavier, electric with anticipation, as if the building itself is breathing, watching, waiting. Visitors report fleeting glimpses of shadow figures at the edges of vision, shapes that dart between doorways, vanish into walls, or linger for a heartbeat before dissolving into darkness. These are not figments of imagination, say those who have felt them. They are the echoes of souls trapped by memory, pain, or unfinished business, refusing to leave, their energy entwined with the very stones of the asylum. There are corners where the temperature drops sharply, icy cold spots that seem to pulse with unseen life. Some claim to hear whispers, sometimes pleading, sometimes accusatory, carried on the faintest currents of air. The continuity of these sounds is chilling. You feel as if the building itself remembers every cry, every scream, every whispered confession from decades past. It is here, in the midst of such oppressive silence, that some believe the Jinn are present, entities neither fully human nor spirit, lingering in spaces steeped in suffering. They are felt rather than seen, a prickling on the skin, a weight pressing on the chest, the unmistakable sense that you are not alone, that something intelligent, unseen, is observing. Many have described the feeling of being followed, even when no one is visible. Footsteps echo in perfect rhythm with your own. Yet when you stop, they do not. Doors creak open of their own accord, and objects shift as though moved by invisible hands. Some rooms seem to trap you in a loop of sensation. The continuity of movement is broken. Time feels distorted, and the mind begins to question what is real. Ghostly figures appear at the end of halls, silent observers with hollow eyes that seem to peer into the very essence of your being. For some, these spirits manifest in tragic forms. Patients who once wandered these halls in despair, their faces frozen in terror, their presence a testament to the cruelty they endured. For others, the specters are fleeting, almost playful, appearing to guide, taunt, or warn those who venture too far into the asylum's depths. What makes the paranormal activity here uniquely haunting is its persistence. It is not a single night's terror, nor a random occurrence. It is a continuity of presence that threads through decades, stitched into the fabric of the asylum itself. Lights flicker in the same rooms, in the same patterns that they did when patients once screamed in fear. Cold drafts trace the same paths as the hurried steps of those long gone. Shadows stretch along familiar corridors, repeating movements that were recorded in memory, captured somehow by the energy left behind. The Jinn, spirits, and ghosts do not act randomly. They inhabit specific spaces where suffering was concentrated, where the boundary between life and death, sanity and madness, was thinnest. Visitors who enter at night often describe a sense of being watched, of not just seeing the paranormal but being part of it. The asylum seems to pull them into its story, offering glimpses of the past while blending it seamlessly with the present. Some swear they hear conversations, soft and indistinct, between spirits themselves, discussing grievances, recalling moments of torment, or warning the living away from repeating history. And in that eerie dialogue, the continuity of human suffering, mingled with the presence of Jinn and ghostly remnants, becomes almost tangible. Every creak, every flicker of light, every whispering shadow forms a tapestry that draws the visitor into the asylum's spell, leaving a mark that lingers long after they leave. The presence of Jinn and other entities within the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum is something that cannot be easily explained. It is subtle, almost imperceptible at first, but once felt, it changes everything. As you move through the endless corridors, there are moments when the air itself seems to thicken, as though charged with energy not of this world. Some claim that the Jinn here are attracted to suffering, drawn to the asylum by decades of anguish, fear, and madness. They are not always malevolent, but their intentions are unknowable, their forms shifting between glimpses of shadows, flickers of movement, and fleeting whispers that curl around your mind like smoke. Unlike ghosts, who often linger with unfinished business or sorrow, Jinn seem to observe, to test, to toy with those who dare enter their domain. You feel them in the back of your mind, in the brush of air against your skin, or in the prickling sensation that someone, or something, is standing just behind you, watching silently. The continuity of their presence is what makes it so terrifying. Unlike a momentary chill or a sudden noise, the feeling of being observed never fully leaves. Some visitors report walking through one hallway and then returning hours later, only to feel the same oppressive weight of unseen eyes. Rooms that were empty earlier seem occupied later, with subtle disturbances. A faint movement in the corner, the quiet scrape of something across the floor, or lights that flicker, as if acknowledging your presence. It is as if the jinn, and perhaps spirits themselves, remember where you have been, guiding you, warning you, or simply observing the living weave their path through corridors steeped in pain and history. Ghosts and spirits mingle with these entities, sometimes indistinguishable in form or intent. The shadow of a long, dead patient may pass where the jinn linger, creating an eerie layering of time and existence. You might see a figure in the distance, only for it to dissolve into mist, leaving behind a faint, mournful whisper that echoes down the hallway. It is as if the asylum itself has become a nexus, a place where the living, the dead, and beings from other dimensions converge. Every creaking floorboard, every sudden gust of wind, every flicker of candlelight or broken bulb contributes to a sensation that this is not merely a building, but a living, breathing organism, inhabited by the memories of those who suffered, and the unseen entities who feed on that energy. Some visitors describe encounters that are more direct: a sudden tug at clothing, a whispered name, a sensation of being guided or chased through darkened hallways. It is difficult to distinguish between the jinn and the restless human spirits, and perhaps that is intentional. The asylum blurs boundaries, merging past and present, the corporeal and the ethereal. Continuity is maintained not just through architecture or memory, but through the repeated experiences of those who enter. The way the jinn and spirits seem to play out interactions over and over again, allowing new arrivals to witness history replayed in ghostly fragments. Night tours often amplify these phenomena. Under dim lantern light, the asylum takes on a life of its own. Shadows twist and curl unnaturally, whispers rise where no one speaks, and the sensation of being observed intensifies. Some say that certain rooms are so saturated with energy that even those skeptical of the paranormal feel it a pressure on the chest, a cold spot that refuses to warm, or the unmistakable sensation of something brushing past your arm when no one is there. In these moments, the line between ghosts, spirits, and jinn dissolves entirely. They are all part of the asylum's story, a continuous, ever-present web of energy that ensnares the living in the echoes of the past. The Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum is more than a historical site. It is a repository of human suffering and supernatural presence, where jinn and ghosts coexist in a delicate, terrifying balance. Each visitor who steps inside becomes part of the continuum. The narrative of anguish, curiosity, and otherworldly activity stretching back over a century. And in that continuum, the whispers, shadows, and fleeting touches become more than phenomena. They become the voice of the asylum itself, speaking directly to those willing to listen, challenging them to sense what is real, what lingers, and what will never leave. The Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum is not simply a building frozen in time. It is a living chronicle of suffering, an echo of every scream, every sob, every whispered plea that has ever reverberated through its stone walls. The continuity of suffering here is palpable. as if the very air remembers the torment it has witnessed. Step into a hallway, and you can almost feel the pulse of the past beating beneath your feet. An invisible rhythm that mirrors the despair of those who once roamed these corridors. It is in this continuity that the asylum's true power resides, not in any single ghostly encounter, but in the way the layers of human anguish, spirits, and jinn interweave to create an unbroken chain of haunting. Each story, each lingering soul, each unexplained flicker of movement becomes a thread in a tapestry that stretches across decades, drawing the living into a dialogue with the dead. The spirits here do not move randomly. They occupy spaces charged with the memory of suffering. Isolation cells still radiate the cold, suffocating energy of the countless patients who endured hours, sometimes days, in darkness and silence. Visitors report sudden chills, icy touches on their skin, or whispers so faint that they almost doubt their own ears. But the continuity is undeniable. It is the same chill, the same brush of air that countless others have felt before, an invisible fingerprint left by suffering that refuses to fade. The jinn, too, seem drawn to these pockets of concentrated anguish. They inhabit corners, archways, and abandoned rooms, their presence sensed in the prickle at the back of the neck, in shadows that twitch unnaturally, in the weight that presses down on the chest as if warning or testing those who dare intrude upon their realm. Time in the asylum becomes fluid. You may walk down a hallway built in the 19th century and feel the footsteps of patients who lived and died long ago alongside your own. The groans of the past mingle with the creaks of the present. The flicker of a candle revealing fleeting silhouettes at the edge of vision. Some say that, if you pause and listen carefully, the asylum will replay fragments of history, a patient calling for help, a nurse's hurried steps, the distant hum of a treatment device. Each haunting is not isolated but part of a continuum, a looping story of pain and unrest that draws the living into a narrative that refuses to end. Even the walls seem to participate, their surfaces absorbing echoes, vibrating subtly with the energy of spirits who have nowhere else to go. The continuity of suffering also creates a strange intimacy between the living and the dead. Visitors often describe the feeling that the asylum is aware of them, that it watches, studies, and perhaps even interacts with their presence. Shadow figures linger just beyond reach, disappearing the instant one focuses on them, as if the jinn or restless spirits are reminding the living that here, nothing is ever truly isolated. Every action, every step, every heartbeat resonates through the chain of history. Lights flicker not by accident, but in synchrony with unseen observers. Doors creak as if moved by invisible hands, and the softest whispers carry across halls, repeating phrases that may have been spoken 100 years ago. The asylum is a place where the past is not dead, it is continuously alive. Woven into every corner, every creaking floorboard, every cold draft that wraps around the living. This continuity of suffering, intertwined with ghostly activity and the presence of jinn, transforms the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum into more than a haunted site. It becomes a living experience of history and horror. The building is a storyteller, its language composed of shadows, whispers, and unexplained phenomena. Visitors do not merely witness the hauntings, they are drawn into them, stepping into a narrative that spans generations. Each shadow, each flicker, each ghostly echo is a link in the chain, reminding anyone who dares enter that here, The past never truly dies, and the spirits, human and supernatural alike, are forever bound to the continuity of suffering that defines this place. To truly feel the weight of the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, one must experience it at night, when shadows stretch longer, the corridors grow colder, and the whispers of the past are no longer just stories, but palpable presences. Night tours are not mere walks through history. They are journeys into the continuity of human suffering and supernatural unrest, where every step seems to echo centuries of despair. The first moment you enter after dark, the atmosphere shifts. The air feels heavier, charged with a tension that tightens around your chest and prickles the skin, a subtle but undeniable presence of beings unseen. Shadows flit across the walls, shapes that dissolve when looked at directly, leaving behind the lingering question: was that a trick of the eye or something more? As the tour winds through the dimly lit hallways, the asylum itself becomes an active participant. The continuity of suffering resonates in every room. Where the patients once screamed in isolation, faint cries can now be heard or felt, pressing against the mind. Lights flicker in synchrony with these sensations, as though the building itself acknowledges the living presence intruding upon its domain. Here, the spirits of patients long dead seem to replay fragments of their past lives. Some appear at the end of halls, lingering briefly, watching the living with hollow eyes, only to vanish when approached. Others move closer, seemingly aware of those who dare enter, their presence marked by sudden chills, or the sensation of a hand brushing against an unseen shoulder. And always, somewhere in the periphery, lurk the Jinn, creatures neither fully human nor fully spirit, whose presence is felt in sudden temperature drops, unexplained whispers, and a sense that you are being observed, tested, and perhaps judged by forces beyond comprehension. The night tour is designed to immerse visitors in the asylum's layered history. But what makes it truly terrifying is how it blurs the line between past and present. Footsteps echo behind you, matching your own, yet no one is there. Doors creak as if opening for unseen guests, and the soft sound of dragging chains seems to follow you through hallways where no chains exist. This continuity of paranormal activity creates a sense that the asylum is alive, aware of each new visitor, weaving their experience into the fabric of its long history. Some guests describe hearing conversations in the dark, fragments of dialogue between spirits themselves, discussing grievances, recounting moments of torment, or whispering warnings to the living. These experiences are not isolated. They are part of a continuum, an unbroken chain, linking the present to a century or more of human suffering and supernatural presence. Even simple rooms take on a new weight at night. Isolation cells, padded chambers, and old treatment rooms become portals to the past. You may feel the lingering despair of patients who suffered cruel treatments, their energy saturated in the walls, creating an almost tactile sense of anguish. Shadows twist unnaturally in the corners. Whispers curl around your mind, and a sudden breeze may carry faint voices or the feeling of someone unseen passing close by. The Jinn, drawn to these spaces, seem to inhabit the darkest corners, their presence sensed more than seen. A reminder that the asylum is not merely haunted by human spirits, but by otherworldly entities that have claimed this place as their own. By the time the tour concludes, visitors often emerge changed. They carry with them the continuity of the asylum's story, the mingling of human suffering, ghostly presence, and Jinn. Each step, each flicker of shadow, each whisper becomes part of the memory. A personal thread woven into the asylum's tapestry of terror. The night tour does not simply show the haunted asylum, it immerses you in it, suspending disbelief, bending time, and drawing the living into the eternal continuum, where spirits linger, Jinn watch, and the echoes of suffering refuse to fade. To walk these halls at night is to become part of the story, to feel the asylum's spell as it stretches across generations, binding all who enter to the restless energies that define this chilling place. As the night fades and the first light of dawn creeps over the hills of West Virginia, the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum stands as a silent witness to centuries of human suffering and supernatural mystery. Its walls, once built with the promise of healing, now carry the echoes of lives trapped, tormented, and forgotten. The shadows that linger, the whispers that float through its hallways, and the restless Jinn and spirits remind us that history is not just dates and facts. It is lived experience, raw and haunting, preserved in stone, memory, and energy. This asylum teaches us that the past is never truly gone. The stories of those who suffered, of the treatments endured, and of the spirits that still roam these halls are warnings, reminders, and lessons all at once. They urge us to respect the lives and minds of others, to learn from history, and to remember that places like this are both historical landmarks and living monuments of human endurance, tragedy, and mystery. If you found yourself captivated, chilled, or moved by this story, let others experience it too. Share this video with friends, family, or anyone who loves history, mystery, and the unexplained. And don't forget to subscribe so you can join us on future journeys into the forgotten corners of history, where the past whispers, spirits linger, and the line between reality and the unknown blurs in the most haunting of ways. Step carefully, listen closely, and remember, some stories refuse to stay buried, and some spirits never truly rest.